In just a few months of 2025, the U.S. immigration policy underwent drastic changes that shook not only the country itself, but the entire world. A new president, a new course, new rules that threaten the fate of thousands of people. But what is behind this shift? Who wins and who loses in this struggle for security and humanity? And why now, just a short time after Biden's reforms, is Donald Trump once again changing course to tighten immigration policy? In this video, I will explain how the U.S. determines the fate of migrants, what decisions can lead to turning points, and what exactly has changed over the few months of 2025. Prepare for important and sometimes shocking revelations. The new course of immigration policy in the U.S. Immediately after taking office, the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, began fulfilling his campaign promises to tighten immigration policy. First and foremost, he shut down the asylum system for migrants from Mexico, stating that they could pose a threat to national security. Trump referred to a law that allows the president to suspend the entry of foreign nationals if their presence is detrimental to the country. Border Patrol officers are now required to deport migrants immediately after collecting biometric data, without giving them the opportunity to appeal in court. This completely changes the rules, effectively closing the path to asylum for most refugees. Moreover, the new policy affected not only the border with Mexico, but also the coastal areas of Florida and the border with Canada. Some detained migrants are now immediately handed over to Canadian authorities. Additionally, Trump effectively suspended all asylum requests, except in cases where migrants can prove a life-threatening danger. Under Biden, migrants could still apply through the CBP One app. But now even that option has disappeared. Human rights advocates have already protested, stating that this policy deprives thousands of families fleeing persecution of their chance for safety. However, Trump supporters are confident that strict measures will help protect the borders. Such a course in the U.S. is causing serious debates. The question is whether this policy will persist in the future or if the country will return to more lenient methods, and why the current U.S. president has initiated such a strict policy towards migrants. Let's figure it out. Joe Biden's immigration policy. The current policy of Donald Trump regarding the fight against migrants is a natural continuation of his policy during the first term. But in 2021, Joe Biden came to power, who had completely opposite views on this issue. When Biden took office as president, he immediately began to revise the strict immigration policy of his predecessor. On his very first day, he halted the construction of the border wall with Mexico, lifted the travel ban from several countries, and eased deportation rules. His administration focused on protecting migrants rather than mass deportations. The Department of Homeland Security, led by Alejandro Mayorkas, changed the priorities of the immigration service. At that time, the focus was on combating violent crimes rather than deporting people for minor offenses. In the first 100 days, Biden even suspended deportations, but soon faced lawsuits from the state of Texas. As a result, a federal judge blocked this moratorium and deportations resumed. Biden also took measures to protect the so-called Dreamers, immigrants who came to the U.S. as children. He signed an order to preserve the DACA program and urged Congress to grant these people official status. However, his attempts to pass comprehensive immigration reform faced resistance and were unsuccessful. On one hand, Biden relaxed control, but on the other, he maintained some of the restrictions introduced by Trump. For example, he extended the enforcement of Title 42. This measure allowed for the rapid expulsion of migrants, under the pretext of health regulations introduced during the pandemic. The practice of expedited deportation of families to Central American countries also resumed. Meanwhile, Biden promised to raise the refugee admission quota to 125,000 people per year. However, in 2021 he supported a record-low limit of 15,000, set during Trump's administration. Under pressure from critics, the administration adjusted its plans, but the pace of refugee resettlement remained extremely low. Another important reform by Biden concerned the operations of immigration and customs enforcement. The new rules prohibited agents from detaining people solely for their legal status. Now, deportation is only a threat to those who have committed serious crimes, such as murder, rape, or violent assaults. But the main issue with Biden's policy is the sharp increase in the number of migrants at the border. In response, the administration expanded centers for holding underage migrants and attempted to negotiate with Mexico and Central American countries, allocating billions of dollars for development programs. However, this move drew criticism from both Republicans and Democrats. Biden's policy turned out to be controversial. He promised to make the immigration system humane, but in reality, he was forced to balance between liberal reforms and the necessity of a tough solution to real problems at the border. Was he able to find the golden mean? The answer to this question remains open. Key changes in U.S. immigration policy. Now let's talk about the changes in Donald Trump's policy during his second presidential term. In more detail, one of the most notable decisions was Trump's signing of the visual system, an order to revoke birthright citizenship. This right, enshrined in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution since 1868. Year. However, the new administration decided to reconsider this principle, which immediately sparked a storm of legal protests. Just a few days after the order came into effect, a federal judge in the state of Washington blocked it, calling it a blatant violation of the Constitution. More than 20 states, including California, New York, and Illinois, as well as human rights organizations, filed lawsuits against this decision. Now the fate of the order may be decided in the Supreme Court, which, after recent judicial appointments, shows a clear shift to the right. Another significant change was the declaration of a state of emergency at the Mexican border. This move allowed the administration to use federal funds without Congress's approval, deploy military personnel to the border, and expedite the deportation of illegal migrants. The president justified his decision with an article of the Constitution that obliges the government to protect the states from invasion. However, constitutional lawyers have harshly criticized this interpretation, stating that the term invasion is traditionally applied to military conflicts, not migration flows. Incidentally, such a state of emergency has already been declared twice. In 2019, when the Trump administration attempted to bypass Congress to secure funding for the construction of the border wall. At that time, this move sparked fierce debates and was perceived as an attempt to expand the influence of the executive branch, bypassing the system of checks and balances. Significant changes also affected asylum policy. The executive order issued by Trump suspended the acceptance of asylum applications for 90 days. All current procedures are frozen, and new petitions are temporarily not being considered. This has already led to serious consequences. Thousands of people are stranded on the Mexican side of the border in an uncertain situation. According to human rights activists, since the beginning of 2022, about 100,000 Russians have crossed the border with Mexico, hoping to seek asylum in the U.S. However, these figures do not account for those who entered on a tourist visa and stayed in the country illegally. All these changes show that U.S. immigration policy is moving towards tightening, and immigration issues remain one of the most pressing topics on the country's political agenda. The tightening of immigration policy is not the only problem you might face in the U.S. If you drive a car, you know very well that even the slightest accident, can become a major headache. Therefore, if you find yourself in such an unpleasant situation in the U.S. and don't know what to do, I can recommend the legal firm Accident America, where you can find a competent lawyer to protect your interests. I assure you that with this company, you can receive compensation even without having accident insurance. America has helped secure $21 million in compensation for its clients. Here, they will definitely answer all your questions. Link in the description. Reaction to Trump's policy. Trump's immigration policy sparked a strong wave of reaction both domestically and internationally. The UN reminded the U.S. of their obligations under the Geneva Convention, which states that every country must provide protection to refugees fleeing persecution. Ravina Shamdasani, a spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, emphasized that border control should not contradict international human rights standards. Pope Francis also expressed his opinion. In a message to American Catholic bishops, he condemned mass deportations, calling them a threat to the dignity of people who have left their countries due to poverty and persecution. The pontiff urged the faithful in the United States not to succumb to discrimination and to show compassion towards migrants. But criticism is not only coming from international organizations and spiritual leaders. Major businessmen and tech giants have also not stayed on the sidelines. For example, Elon Musk, a member of Trump's business council, cautiously stated on social media that the president's order is not the best way to solve the problem. According to him, the new restrictions affect innocent people who do not deserve to be turned away. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos did not make a public statement, but the company offered legal assistance to its employees affected by the new laws. However, Uber CEO Travis Kalanick found himself in a more complicated situation. His participation in Trump's council sparked a wave of criticism among employees and users of the service. In response, Kalanick emphasized that U.S. immigration policy has always been based on the principle of openness, and therefore he will discuss the situation with the president at the next council meeting. It is evident that Trump's anti-immigration measures have divided American society. Some consider them necessary for the country's security, while others see them as a blatant violation of human rights. And while the courts are sorting out the legality of the orders, and politicians and business people are expressing their opinions, thousands of people on both sides of the border are waiting for decisions that will change their lives. How does the deportation process work in the U.S.? Deportation is not just expulsion from the country. It is a complex process that begins long before a person finds themselves on a plane heading back to their home country. The U.S. strictly controls its immigration system, and those who have broken the law are subject to deportation. These can be people who have committed crimes, pose a threat to public safety, or have violated the terms of their visa. First, the violator is detained. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as IC, may send them to one of the detention centers. There, they will remain until the hearing. Some foreigners have the right to appear before an immigration judge. But there are also those who can be deported without a trial through the expedited removal process. This happens if a person arrived in the U.S. without the necessary documents, used fake papers, or violated entry conditions. If the court issues a deportation order, ICE proceeds with its execution. In most cases, the person is deported by plane. For this, ICE has an entire aviation division called IC, Air Operations. It is responsible for transporting detainees both within the country and abroad. There are two main methods of air deportation. The first is charter flights organized specifically to send foreigners back to their home countries. They are also used to transport detainees between detention centers in the U.S. The second method is commercial airlines, which are used for deporting individuals, including those without IC agents accompanying them. But there are also special deportation flights, known as high-risk charters. They are intended for foreigners who pose a security threat, have evaded deportation orders, or have other aggravating circumstances. In some cases, foreigners have the opportunity to avoid forced deportation and leave the U.S. voluntarily at their own expense. This is called voluntary departure. And for those convicted of nonviolent crimes, there is the Rapid Repat program, which allows them to be released from prison early and return to their home country. Deportation in the U.S. is a well-tuned mechanism operating on a full-scale level. Every year, thousands of people leave the country by court order or through expedited removal. And although this process may seem inhumane, it is an integral part of American immigration policy. Policy changes regarding Ukrainian refugees. The Trump administration is preparing for radical changes in immigration policy that will affect Ukrainian refugees. It is expected that in April of this year, a decision will be made to revoke the temporary legal status of about 240,000 Ukrainians residing in the United States. This move is part of the administration's broader efforts to revoke the status of more than 1.8 million migrants who were granted humanitarian visas under Joe Biden. However, despite rumors and discussions on social media, the White House administration was quick to refute the information. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that a decision has not yet been made. Nevertheless, concern among Ukrainians is growing. On social media, there are reports that deportation prisons have been opened for them in Guantanamo, and some are even considering possible immigration to Mexico. The reaction to such measures was not long in coming. People around the world are expressing outrage. On social media, accusations can be found against Trump, comparing his actions to Nazi Germany. Critics also point out that this decision goes beyond the bounds of humanity. Many users, including Australians and Dutch, are calling these steps insane and disgusting. Meanwhile, the decision to end the Uniting for Ukraine program, which allowed Ukrainians to escape the war and find refuge in the U.S., also raises many questions. This program, which was launched almost 3 years ago, has helped more than 300,000 Ukrainian refugees. Now, however, no Ukrainian can enter the country through this program, and those who are already in the U.S. cannot apply for an extension of their status. Ukrainians in the U.S. with temporary protected status are also at risk. Currently, they are allowed to stay in the country until April 2025, but under the current Trump administration policy, even this status could be revoked. Ukrainians in such a situation now cannot help but wonder what will happen to them next if the policy continues to change in this direction. We hope that the Trump administration will make the most balanced decision. It is clear that soon we will learn a lot of new news about the fight against migrants in the U.S. Well, that's all I have for now. I hope you enjoyed my video today, and you'll give it a like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. They come out almost